Hello, and welcome to A Night with the Dark Knight, the show that takes a look at Batman through the ages, for better or for worse.
With your dynamic duo, Aidan Gula.
And me, George Ellis.
And tonight we are talking about Batman Begins.
Yes, we are. It's the first of the Nolan trilogy, and the Nolan trilogy is often seen as very good Batman, if not just very good films. And I think historically, Aidan, whenever I've mentioned Batman Begins, you've always been quite negative towards it and always said how, oh, I don't like it. That's been you.
I've always found it boring. Like, it always used to bore me to absolute tears.
Mm-hmm.
It was the kind of thing it'd be like the kind of thing I used to watch with my dad. It'd be like, right, let's watch a Batman film. It would basically be like, well, let's watch The Dark Knight then. That's the exciting one. And sometimes he'd go, should we try giving Batman Begins a go? And we'd go, okay, sure, let's try that. And we'd get an hour in and we'd all be like, should we just watch The Dark Knight, shouldn't we? It's well boring, this. So that's how I've always remembered it. But having seen it again, though, I'm suddenly like, I think this has just gone from my fifth favorite Batman film to my second favorite Batman film. Now, this has just shot up massively having watched it again. So I think you can view my negative opinions on Batman Begins kind of drained. They don't exist anymore. I didn't write many negative notes for this.
And I think that's been because we've been exploring Batman through the ages, having a look at different versions and really just looking at the good, the bad, and everything in between. And now you've been able to look at this and compare it to other versions of Batman and kind of see what it fixes, what it does wrong in some places, but kind of what it fixes.
Because I think it's this case of what my vision of Batman is. It's basically for me, this podcast has kind of been basically trying to find what my vision of Batman is. And I feel like this film kind of nailed it. And I was watching this thinking, that's not even the case of, that's just because this is what I've grown up on. So this is how I imagine Batman to be. Because that's not really accurate. Because as I've said in previous episodes, my favorite Batman films growing up were 66 and 89. So they're my kind of, if you're going to say, what's your vision of Batman? If anything, it's that. So when I then see this, it's like, no, but this is what I think Batman should be. And within 39 minutes, it fixed every single problem that I had with every other episode that we've done on this podcast. When I go, oh, why are they doing that? It doesn't really make sense. Well, if he's doing that, why does this make sense? This was like, no, we're going to explain it to you and we're going to fix it for you. So I was just like, it's like this is a perfect response. It's like somebody watched all 9 episodes of this podcast and then went, okay, we'll make a Batman film that you will like then. And then this is what they've come out with. And I've gone, thank you. Thank you. That's perfect.
Yeah. They've answered your question. I actually did send that letter to Frank Miller and then he made this for us. So his name isn't involved in this at all, but he was the but no, I'm glad you've enjoyed this. And I'm glad I've been able to show you something that you've enjoyed,
that I've liked.
Well, yeah, because we've seen stuff that you've liked before, like 1966, Batman, 1989. But I think this is the first one where I've been able to show you a Batman thing, and you've gone, actually, I've changed my mind for the better, rather than George, this was quite shit. It's a nice change.
Because I'm trying to think, was Zack Snyder's Justice League that was like, oh, I'm enjoying this. Then by the end of it, I was like, I never want to see this again in my life. I'm trying to think what the Mask of the Phantasm I just found really boring. Dark Knight Returns, I just have major issues with. Return of the Joker, I preferred my version than what the actual film is. So it is this really this negative track record. I'm going, it's okay, but I've got massive problems with it. Whereas this one was actually like, you know what, this is pretty damn good. And I have very few problems with it. And the only problems I have with it are kind of like, does that really make sense? But besides that, there's no real problems.
Yeah, I thoroughly do enjoy Batman Begins. And I've always, I think similarly to how you viewed the Dark Knight trilogy, I always viewed the Dark Knight as the best one, and it was leagues above every other one. But in recent years, I've been revisiting all of them, Dark Knight Rises still sits quite low on my tier lists. But Batman Begins has kind of shot up, and because I saw it in the cinema during COVID time, because they were re-showing things, and I was like, I've never seen it in the cinema. It came out in 2005. I was a wee child then, like I didn't see it, so I thought I'd go see it, and it was wonderful actually seeing it in the cinema. And there were some great elements that really worked. Like for example, when Liam Neeson is walking around in the crowd of ninjas, and you know how the sound kind of pans in the cinema. That's incredible. Wow. Like it was great on my 7.1 surround sound headphones, but it was really great in the cinema. But I thoroughly enjoy Batman Begins, and it's grown on me over the years. And now, because I've seen loads of different versions of Batman, and now you've seen quite a few, it's kind of created an appreciation for this film rather than just seeing it as its own thing. Seeing it as an adaptation of Batman really does elevate it, and it does a lot of things.
That's how I feel, yeah.
Perfectly. But it does do a couple of things which I'm like, it's not quite Batman, but I can explain around it, you know? But I do really enjoy Batman Begins, and I think, well, it's basically the year one storyline, which is actually a Frank Miller comic. It's basically year one, but live action. And it takes a lot of stuff from that, but it also does a lot of its own changes when it comes to being an adaptation. Like, for example, in Batman's history, he's never been trained by the League of Assassins, League of Shadows. Like, that's never been part of his history. He's always just kind of trained loads of different places. He's had different masters and that kind of thing, different senseis, all that. But he's never been trained by an enemy. And it's quite a nice take on it, I think, because the way it brings everything full circle as well. Like, and it shows you why his ideals are so against, like, it's a nice change of his background, but doesn't ruin it, you know?
Yeah, I like it as a detail, because then it also, and obviously it sets up the, here's your villain, no, here's your real villain, no, here's your real villain kind of thing that this film does, which I really like. So it sets up that, but I do like the way that in the scene where it's like, right, if you want justice, it's all about him trying to find justice, and it's going, right, if you want justice, kill this man. And he's like, no, like, you might have trained me, but actually that's not what I believe in. And I really like that as like you said, for the contrast, to then set that up later on. I really like that as a detail.
I think that detail of him, this whole film is really, I'm really getting excited, because there's so much in this film that I love, because I now know about other things. Like, one of the main things is the way this film fleshes out his history, the history of the Waynes, the history of Gotham, really, and how in the last episode, when we're talking about The Dark Knight Returns, we didn't really know much about his history, and I pass it off as, it's Batman. Of course, he's going to be a good guy with his money. His parents would have been nice. But this film really shows you it's Batman's origin story, and it doesn't cower away from showing the Wayne's history, you know, and who they are, and why, and what Gotham is like, and why Batman is Batman, really.
I was thinking that what you've just said there about the last episode, where you going, well, of course Batman will do this, because this is what I know from this. And I think that was what's really key here, is that, because you said, you know, Dark Knight Returns is kind of the same continuity as those other ones, but they're not really, because they're not sequels, but they kind of are, but they're not. Like,
same writer, but kind of.
Yeah. It's like, watching that, I was treating that as it's just its own thing. This is just it, The Dark Knight Returns. Anything that came before, maybe, but they're not official, you know, prequels to this. So it's going, this is the film. This is the film. Anything else is what you're just adding into that. And you were saying a lot of like, yeah, well, what from I know I can believe this, but my thing was saying, if it's not said in the film, it isn't a thing. That's always my kind of my thing. In this, that's what it was already setting up with all the backstory. It was telling me all the things that I wanted to know and showing me what the Waynes have done. It wasn't just this case of, surely, if you know, the Waynes have money to help the city. It was going, here, this is how they've helped the city. I was like, well, thank you for giving me this information, so I know they've tried. And then obviously when Bruce Wayne's away, he can't help that. And that's how Gotham has descended. So I'm like, thank you. You've given me how Bruce Wayne's affected the city here, how the Waynes have affected the city here. You've explained it to me, rather than just going, he might have done something. You can believe it if you want to. It was like, it was saying it in the film, and therefore it is a thing. So I was with you there, saying this is my big problem with the last film was the interpretation. This is a film that's kind of going, we're going to leave little to interpretation because we're just going to tell you what's going on. And I appreciate that more because then I could be like, I'm with you. I know the state of the city. I know the state of Bruce Wayne. I could follow this rather than going, is this what's going on? I don't like that. And I much preferred how this film handled that.
There's no ambiguity to motives. Like in The Dark Knight Returns, his motives were, if I'm honest with you, very selfish. In Batman Begins, you know his motives. Initially, it's just all about revenge. And he's going to shoot Joe Chill. And then once he can't get that, he's then snapped back to reality. Oops, there goes gravity. He's kind of pulled back to being about kind of justice by Rachel Dawes, but more by the fact Rachel brings up his father. That mention of his father saying your father will be ashamed, and then it kind of pushes him to thinking all about that stuff. And then you see his conflict with the gun, and it's all, you see that initial turning point of why does he decide to be a superhero instead of just a revenge-seeking vigilante, you know?
And that's also something that is a big contrast from what we were saying last week. Because last week I was quite anti-Batman in Dark Knight Returns, when all the people were saying he's a menace to society, he creates the problems. I was like, yeah, I'm with you. I believe you here. And that was very much how The Dark Knight Returns led me to believe Batman was in that film. I didn't warm to that Batman whatsoever. But in this film, when Ra's al Ghul, I always say Ra's. I know we both say Raish, but this they kept saying Raz, and I was like, "Why are you saying Raz? It's obvious, it's Raish, isn't it? It's Raish."
It's to do with the initial dialect. Like I think it's to do with the actual name has like two different ways to be said. It is either Raz or Raish. So it is Raish, but it can also be Raz, but it's all kind of.
So I remember. Obviously, this was my first introduction to Ra's al Ghul. So I was used to call him Ra's al Ghul.
Ugh.
But then when I watched Arrow and he shows up in that, they were all going Ra's al Ghul, and I'm going, why are you all saying Ra's al Ghul? Where have you got that from? Yeah, how have you possibly got Raish from R-A''S? And then I watched Under the Red Hood, and they say Ra's al Ghul in that, and I was going, wait, is it actually Ra's al Ghul? And you were wrong. You were wrong. So now I say Ra's al Ghul, and then I go back to this, and I'm like, wait, no, why are you saying that? But anyway, that's beside the point. When he says about being a vigilante, he says that's just doing it for your own gratification. I was like, yes, that's you've said that. That's how I felt about last week. You're saying you're just doing this because you want to do this. And he said, but actually seeking justice is about blah blah blah. I didn't write down the rest of the quote, so I don't know. But when he was then explaining the other point about how
justice is about harmony. That was it.
That was it, yeah. And then when Batman takes that on rather than more than just I'm vigilante and whoa, here I am, I was like, I really appreciate that line because that does kind of sum up how I felt about last week compared to this week. And I thought Raish, who appeared really quickly in the film, which I like. You know, I've got a short attention span. There's no messing about. 10 minutes in, here he is. It was like, thank you for that. No building up, just here he is. It was like, thank you. I thought that was a really nice line that kind of summed up the big difference between how I felt from Begins to Returns. Again, one right at the end and one at the start. There's a massive contrast here. But I appreciated that.
Yeah. And I think I think this is something I didn't mention to you when you were watching it, but kind of a question I want us to focus on in this episode is, well, it's kind of a two-parter. Is Batman Begins a great jumping on point for Batman? And is it one of, if not the best, Batman origin stories? Those are the questions.
I mean, they were both things I was considering when I was watching it anyway. So I feel like it's quite funny that you didn't even tell me them, and I'm already going, this is quite a good jumping on point. But I thought it was jumping on point wise. I was thinking that because I was thinking it is establishing your world and giving you, it's setting up how this Batman believes. And there's, like I said, there's no ambiguity here. It's saying this is what he believes, this is why he believes it. And it's a much better way than I think most of the animations that we've watched have been, which have all kind of been predicated on if you know Batman, you'll know how he'll probably feel here.
I will agree with you there. Most, if not all, of the animations, like even the Red Hood, does rely on you knowing about Batman in the past. It does give you like, it does tell you all about Jason Todd and all that. But if you don't know about Batman and who he is, you won't get as much gratification from it. I do agree with you there.
So I just thought I really thought this was a much better way to just because a lot of this podcast has been about should Batman kill? Should he have these things? We've been trying to analyze what Batman should and shouldn't have across the interpretations, and this I think I don't think there's much left here to establish what this Batman does or doesn't want. I think it kind of just went, this is your Batman, deal with it. And I liked that because I was going, okay, I don't need to have any, would he react? How would he react to this? How would he react to this? Because I kind of know how he would react. And I like that. It's more reassuring for your hero.
This feels a lot like a culmination of our entire series, actually. Seeing
it does.
This...
It's actually a perfect finale because it just really sums up. We couldn't have done this for episode 1.
No.
Because I wouldn't have had the same. If we'd done the episode 1, I probably still would have found it quite boring. But having watched a load of other things, I'm now like, actually, in episode 1, I said Keaton's my favorite Batman. And now I'm going, I think it might be Bale.
I really do love Bale, actually. Let's just focus on Christian Bale for a moment here. The dude, this came out, like, if I remember correctly, straight after The Machinist. Like, it was The Machinist and then this was his next film. And did you do, like, you know, like, I mean, everyone knows what he did for The Machinist, the whole really skinny.
Super skinny.
Yeah. And then he bulked up for this. And that's incredible in itself. But also, I think Christian Bale, well, first off, I want to say his voice in this is way better than it is in The Dark Knight or The Dark Knight Rises. Because it's actually his voice, whereas in the Dark Knight, The Dark Knight Rises, they twiddle it a bit in the After Effects, and then it goes way too much, and it's just over-egged. But in this, I really do think his voice is near perfect for a kind of a realistic, I'm trying to do a Batman voice, and I think Christian Bale pulls it off perfectly. But then they went overboard, and then it's like it's now a joke, and it's a bit of a shame that really, because I want to know what it would have been like without. But I think Christian Bale. I don't think there are many other actors I would trust to be able to show off the emotional range of a tortured Bruce Wayne. Like in those first moments where he's not quite sure of who he is, like before he heads off to train and all that kind of stuff, you can see the conflict in him. He wants the revenge, but he knows it's not right. And then his reaction to Rachel, and then like, it's just, I think Christian Bale is one of my favorite actors. And it's partly because of the Dark Knight trilogy, but also because of other stuff I've seen him in. I think he's wonderful. And I think he is a brilliant Batman and a brilliant Bruce Wayne. I don't think there's he's good at one or good at the other. He's a good kind of all-rounder, I think. And the only thing which this isn't really his fault, really. The only thing that I'm not a huge fan of is we don't get to see his skill in a fight scene properly. And I'm sure Christian Bale would have been very good in a fight scene. But because of the way it's all edited together, we don't get to see how good he is. But I'm sure, knowing how much effort he puts into a role, the dude would have been top of the top tier, you know?
I know exactly what you mean by saying he's conflicted. And I think this is also a thing that kind of, obviously, this is the benefit of live action over animation, is that when an actor is acting, you're seeing the face. Whereas obviously animation, you're just seeing a drawing and there's nothing beyond that drawing. But even comparing it to other Batman, say like Michael Keaton, for example, when I remember saying in that episode that we did, I remember saying he's really charming and he's kind of does that kind of playboy thing really well. But that's kind of it. Do you know what I mean? You're looking at him and you're going, what I mean by this is you're looking at him and you're going, playboy. There you are. With this, Christian Bale was going playboy, but behind that, there's something else.
And you see the over-egged playboy as well, when you can see he's putting it on even further. There are so many layers to it.
That's what I wrote a note as well about Iron Man, actually, saying, some people always say they're quite similar because they're both billionaires, that kind of thing, and they have the secret life and the real blah, 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 blah. And I've seen the difference between him and Iron Man, especially here, is that Iron Man is genuinely that party animal playboy, Whereas Bruce Wayne here is going, I guess I'll just pretend to be it for a bit. And then actually when he's saying all that stuff, like saying, you're all two-faced, you're all just smiling through your teeth, he's just saying that to get them out of the building, but he's absolutely 100% honest there.
Oh, yeah.
And that's not just him going, I just need these people out. That's him saying, I am genuinely telling you what I think about you. And you probably think, oh, I'm just drunk and saying this, but no, this is genuinely how I feel.
Well, with that whole layered facade thing that's really quite wonderful is that actually harkens back to Christian Bale's acting prowess, because when he's doing the drunk version, the drunk mode, often in films and when someone's acting drunk, it's always over-egged, it's always turned up, but I got the image of someone who's ever so slightly drunk to the point where it will turn them to be a little bit arsey, but they're not shit-faced, and that's really difficult to do, and that's subtle. And that's exactly what Batman can do. Batman's an incredible actor because he can put on those facades. But for Christian Bale to be able to do that and then switch, it was great. And there were lots of little details with actually the characterization of Bruce Wayne in this. One of my favorite moments, actually, which I rewatched just to catch, was, when, like, after that scene where he's kicked everyone out and then he's having the discussion with Ra's al Ghul, he's walking around with his champagne glass. And I was thinking, why are you still holding that? You're going to be beaten up in a minute. You should be ready. But the moment he's attacked, he uses that glass to smash into one of the goons' faces. And I'm thinking, that's a nice little detail there. Yeah, that's a nice little detail that can be completely overlooked because of the editing. But it's a nice little detail that the moment he was attacked, used it to subdue one of the attackers. And that's very Batman. And that's just, it's such a,
because you also know in that moment he's basically already scanned the room to go, what can I use as a weapon here? And he's gone, oh, I'm already holding one, I could use this. So then he's just thinking, yes, I'm talking. And that's just what he was thinking there. Yeah, I like that.
Just yes, I'm listening. The
entire time he's thinking, I'm going to smash this into somebody's face in a moment.
It's either going to be yours or your friends. Yeah. Whoever comes first, it's going in your face.
I'm not going to sip this. This is being smashed into somebody's face.
The champagne as well. It'll be the glass. Then the champagne will go in the wound. You'll be in agony.
Yeah,
it's all.
They will. That'll be really painful.
Oh, it's great.
But also, it's showing that Batman doesn't kill as well, because he's also disinfecting the wound by putting the alcohol into it.
Yes.
Even though it's going to get sting like mad, you're also going to go, I'm safe.
Speaking of Batman not killing, this film leans into that so much, and I am so glad it does, because that is such an integral part of Batman. And in all of these instances where we've seen a Batman, or I've shown you something Batman-y, it's always been, we've discussed, should Batman kill? And we've come to the conclusion, no, you blithering idiot, of course he shouldn't. But we've seen examples where the filmmaker or the creatives, be it animation or live action, have taken some leniencies and kind of had it either be ambiguous with The Dark Knight Returns, or they've had him actually outright kill in Zack Snyder's stuff. And
I've had to say anything Zack Snyder's done.
Yeah, or the Tim Burton films. Like, it's that kind of thing. But in this, it is outright stated multiple times, I don't kill, here is why. But it's like, I love that. It's like, I don't kill, but here's the explanation. And it does that multiple times to basically say, this Batman doesn't kill, and you need to accept this. And we're explaining why this is a benefit. And it is a huge benefit for this film. And I don't think this film would be as high up in my list as it is if it wasn't for the fact it is perfect Batman ideology in that sense.
Yeah, and I mean, my favorite line in the entire film was probably, I won't kill, but I don't have to save you. Because what that said, that was a case of when people always go, why doesn't Batman just kill the Joker? All these problems will be over, that kind of thing. What this kind of did is like saying, I know you're a big problem, and if I saved you, you would probably just carry on doing this. Like, there's nothing I can do there. So I'm not actually going to kill you, but I'm just not going to save you. And I'm just going to step back, because technically I'm not killed you, and you can get out of this if you try hard enough.
That's the key thing that's often when it comes to the Batman Begins, that's been my biggest flaw, and I've always come back to it. But then recently I've kind of gone, yeah, but it's Ra's al Ghul. The dude
Yeah, because
can. He's a ninja, for crying out loud.
And it's a case of like, for me, it's like Batman's probably looking at him thinking, I know if I saved you and put you in prison, you'd get out, you'd do this all over again.
Mm-hmm.
But killing you and saving you are very different. And I'm not going to kill you. I'm not going to pin you down and make sure you die here. I'm going to give you the chance to get out. If you don't get out, well, that's on you.
Because he gave him plenty of time to get out, and knowing Ra's al Ghul, he probably could have if he wanted to. And in the comics, the dude's actually immortal, so it's like, it's fine. But I believe Batman should always try and save someone, but also in this instance, it's not like he's saving Ra's al Ghul from the guaranteed death, because Ra's al Ghul could get himself out.
Rachel Ghul.
Rachel Ghul. Ra's al Ghul could get himself out. And the point is, Batman's stepping back, and he's stepping back more than anything. I like that's a better way to phrase it, how you've said. Like he's gone, you can save yourself. I'm not going to do it for you, but you can save yourself. And Ra's al Ghul makes a conscious decision. Peace out, And
I think because it's Ra's al Ghul, or Rachel Ghul, as we're now going to call him, I think because it's him and they have this like long bond, I think it also makes an exception in the case anyway. Like it's not just some villain. It's like, we know each other. I've saved you before. This time I'm not going to save you. And I think you can even if you're going, I think you can make an exception anyway, just because it's Ra's al Ghul. If he had killed him, I'd have been like, no exception. But because it's just this case of, I'm not going to save you, I'm like, I very, very, very much like this.
It's interesting because it's a nice debate. That moment, should he have saved him? Should he not have? But there are loads of different angles you can come at it from, like the angle of he's a ninja, he could get out of that. Old friend, so would he? Like, is there leniency there? There's a lot of angles for it, and I really think it's a very interesting moment in the film because it allows for this discussion without being detrimental to the overall film. When you think about it, because it's interesting.
And also there's a lot of death by proxy in this film. Because like technically, if you say Batman's not killed anybody, technically he killed the Ra's al Ghul decoy, but that wasn't kind of his fault because he actually just wanted to burn that building down.
He started the fire, but then the guy decided to attack him. So it's kind of like,
it's like technically Bruce Wayne killed him, but not really. And also like in that bit when the real Ra's al Ghul dies, you could say, well, technically Sergeant Gordon killed him because he was the one who shot the Foundations.
Yeah.
So actually, is it actually Batman who killed him? You know what I mean? There's a lot of that's the kind of ambiguity I like. It's like going, well, it's kind of, rather than just saying, ooh, it's up to you to imagine what happened. It's like, I'm going to show you what happened. And now you just see who do you think is to blame for that?
When it comes to his decision on staying, I like to think a part of him is seeing his greatest student, as he calls Bruce, kind of be what he could never be. I think a part of him is kind of proud, which I find kind of, I know this is interpreting. I do think this is, I do think that's kind of, I do think that, and I think it's kind of sweet because he wanted Bruce to be able to join them, and they wanted to save Gotham, but they do it through a very destructive means, kind of a clean slate kind of thing. But what Bruce has done there is kind of proven that one man, the Batman, can save all of Gotham, because if he can save them from the League of Shadows, he can probably save them from anything, save Gotham from anything. And I think in that moment, Ra's is seeing that and maybe thinking Gotham's kind of safe and he doesn't need to do what he does anymore. Because I think this Ra's al Ghul did have those ideals that Bruce may have had, but he kind of fell to the dark side, you may say. And that's just a nice element that may be the case for Ra's mindset there. Obviously, we'll never know. The dude might just be knackered and be like, oh, screw it. But I like to think that there may be more to it, because Ra's is a very deep character, especially in the comics. And in this, actually, I don't even need to jump to the comics. In this, he's an incredibly deep character. So that's just.
And also what you're saying there about Gotham, I think what's an interesting thing about this Gotham is this Gotham does feel like it can be pulled back from the brink. Like it feels like, it's descended into chaos, but actually it's because it's a problem of this layered system. If we root out the system problem, it should be fine. Whereas I think with some of the other Gothams we've dealt with, especially last week, it did feel like just bomb it because you can't do anything here. It's beyond help, and that's kind of how Gotham felt to me in The Dark Knight Returns. And it's like, my God, it's so bad. We need a Batman to come back. And even now Batman has come back, we've still not achieved much. It's kind of like, it's still dire. Whereas this one felt like Batman's come here and he's already taken down Falcone. He's taken down.
I like how you
Scarecrow,
say Falcone, not Falcone.
It's probably a Gotham thing.
Yeah, I've always said Falcone.
I think they call him Falcone in a Gotham. But anyway, he's taken him down in his entire operation. Then he's taken down Scarecrow, and then he's taken down League of Shadows. It's like, okay, this Batman gets things done, doesn't he? Whereas kind of, I think some of the other Batmans kind of like, fight you, villain. You're in Arkham. Oh no, you got out. Oh well, let's fight you again. And that's kind of how sometimes they feel. Whereas this one, it was like, no, they're defeated. That's that threat over. And I like how this Batman. Last week our debate was, does Gotham need Batman? And that was kind of like, I'm not really sure. This one was like, yeah, it does, because he actually is helping you.
And there are clear instances where, yeah, because this Gotham, it's bad, not unsalvageable though. And the reason is because of the crime lords. You have the Falcones, and I say Falcones plural because Alberto Falcone, but I don't think Alberto's in this at all. It's just Big Boy Carmine. But you have that corruption, which I think the main thing for this Gotham is corruption is rampant, and Falcone is kind of the source of all that in a way. So you do see once Batman takes him out, that kind of level is kind of gone. And then Scarecrow is actually working for the Reich. And then like as he's taking out a problem, yes, there's more layer to the problem. But once he's taken out one element, whatever problem is directly related to that person, that problem is then gone once that person is taken out of the equation. Do you get what I'm saying? Like a puzzle piece. And like you actually get it said at the end when Lieutenant Gordon is speaking to Batman at the end. He's saying Lieutenant now, and he's saying how Batman's actually started something. Kind of the corrupt cops are now scared, and it's kind of
I thought
making a change.
In that moment, it felt like this is like you've begun something. Something has started. By the end of the film, even though you've just had 2.5 hours of something, by the end of the film, you go, okay, now let's get going. It's like, it's a really strange thing. It's not like we watch something, it's only got going in the final minutes. It's like, no, I've had something get going for 2.5 hours. But then by the end, it's like, okay, and now we start. And then it's over. And you go, no, we're just getting into it. Come on. And then you want more. So like, I'm thinking I'm probably going to watch Dark Knight later today, because I'm like, I enjoy that so much that I want to watch the next one. And probably even give Dark Knight Rises another go.
But then you'll ruin your entire view of everything here.
Yeah. But then I could you could get a message from me going, you know what, I really appreciate this film more now. I probably won't, because it's Dark Knight Rises. But you know what I'm saying?
But yeah, it's like they've started something. They've started this change. Got to make a change. Man in the mirror. Like they've started something, and it's begins, and it's wonderful actually. But one thing I will say compared to the other Dark Knight trilogy films is I do think the Gotham in this feels more like Gotham than in the other ones, and I do
Gotham
feel
in this is you've said that for as long as I've known you, and I've always been like, well, what's so special about this Gotham? And I think it's as much as it was making, every time they said monorail, I thought of that episode of The Simpsons where they install a monorail, then it just keeps going round. But every time they mention the monorail, I thought that's a really nice detail. And I don't know if that's something from the comics, I'm sure it probably is. But it's like, has that ever been in a Gotham before? I don't remember that being in any other Gotham that I've seen. And it's like such an odd detail to include, but it kind of adds so much to the city, and it makes it feel, I'm going to say, otherworldly in the case of like, are there really any cities that kind of look like that? Not really. And I think Gotham in this feels like it's very much its own thing. and suddenly it's on an island, and I'm like, hey, what? When we were on an island? Okay, sure, but it is really I can appreciate when you've been like, it's a great looking Gotham. I'm like, yes, it is now, rather than just being the generic city that it kind of becomes in the other films.
Yeah. In this, I think one of the big elements of making it, as you said, is a monorail, but I think one of the biggest elements of making it look like its own city is the fact you have the Narrows, which is basically the slums of Gotham. And you have this seedy underbelly, which is underneath Gotham as well. So you do have all of these elements of the city that we visit, and you see a more comic interpretation, I think. And you visit the docks and you visit all these locations, which are part of what I know Gotham to be. The main city does look a lot like a normal city, but we don't spend a huge amount of time in it isolated away from the other elements. So it does piece together into being this version of Gotham, you know? Whereas in The Dark Knight, I don't think we ever visit the underground section or the docks or the Narrows at all, actually. And we only ever stay in the city, and it just looks like Chicago. And I don't ever get the feeling when I'm watching The Dark Knight or The Dark Knight Rises that I'm in Gotham quite as much as I do when I'm watching Batman Begins. And that's a bit of a shame, really. And I think if I were to say which is more Batman, this or The Dark Knight, I'd say Batman Begins, which has kind of a better story. The Dark Knight is incredible, but would it be better if you took that story and put it in more of this world? I think it'd be better. But that's just kind of how that is. And I do like the interpretation of Arkham here, how it's kind of just a mental asylum in the middle of the slums. It's kind of like this is the worst place of Gotham and no one's really doing anything to help.
There's also, I think Scarecrow is a really good fit in this film as well, because it leans so much about fear in this film, and I think that's something that's kind of cool for Batman, especially because what year was Batman and Robin? 97 maybe ish, thereabouts. 97, 98,
Probably
late 90s either way.
Yeah.
Then this is less than 10 years later, and they've gone, here's Batman again, and I can imagine a lot of people would go, oh, why are we doing another Batman? Did you not see Batman and Robin? Why are we doing this again? And then you could go and watch it and go, oh, just give it a go then. You go, my God, this Batman's terrifying. Like, where's this guy come from? I thought it was the I have nipples kind of man. And now this guy's terrifying. And I really like that as a version, because this felt, as much as we said, Tim Burton's Batman was taking Batman seriously after 66. You now look at it and you go, no, it's still camp and cheesy. This is them going, no, right. This is them going, right. Batman is a serious character. I know we said this in 1989, but we're telling you it again. He is a serious
You've
character.
all forgotten, so come on.
And this is them going, look, we showed you the dark thing in the early 90s, but we didn't go dark enough. We're going to go darker now because, look, we really like Batman, okay? And he's a really good character, but he's been ruined over the past few years. So here's what Batman actually should be, okay? And people have gone, yeah, all right, I believe you. This Batman's horrifying. We're even going to give him a demon's face at one point.
That's such a great moment.
He's got black tar leaking from his mouth, and you're just going to be like, "Oh my God!" And I'm going to traumatize Aiden as a young boy because he was like, "What is going on here?"
When I was younger, that did proper freak me out, and
I remember not understanding it as a kid.
Yes,
Batman had just like become a demon and being like, "What is going on? What?"
There are so many moments in this where I understand more of it because I'm watching it now as opposed to a kid.
Yeah, I feel like I get it now.
Like when I was younger.
It's probably the first time I've got it.
When I was younger, the way the story was told was kind of jumping around, kind of with the flashbacks. And I was like, I'm a bit lost, but Batman's here. So, woo. But now I'm like, I see it's very interestingly told, actually. You start halfway through his journey, then you jump back to earlier on, then here, then even earlier, and then now. And it's a very interesting way of telling it. And it's nice, actually, instead of just throwing us headfirst into the start, which I think would probably be a bit boring, but it's nice how it tells it. But as you were saying, Scarecrow's a nice, really important in this because of the whole fear element. And it's nice seeing Batman be scary. And fear is such an important factor for Batman, and this film delves into that. how fear is a tactic he uses to kind of rattle the cage and be the one-man army, because without fear the dude would be shot. But he needs that
And also,
theatricality.
and also by saying explicitly, I'm scared of bats, so I'm going to share my dread with everybody
I
else.
love that.
I like that explanation, because it's another thing as well. In other Batman kind of things, he goes, I'm going to be a bat. It's kind of like, why a bat? Where have you got that from? And they might go, I fell down a hole and I saw a bat. And it's still like, yeah, but why are you dressing up as a bat? Like, why would you do that? That's such an odd thing to do. Like in Batman Forever, we talked about this, even though that was delving into some of his backstory a bit more, and it was quite nice to do that. That was basically like, I fell down a hole, I saw a bat, and then I decided to dress up as one. It's like that. It's like, that is not a sane progression of events, Bruce. Like, that is not. Does anybody tell you that's not a normal thing to do? Whereas this, it kind of explains it in a way that's like, this is believable. This makes perfect sense to me. And Alfred, who I've now realized Michael Caine is my favorite Alfred. Absolutely.
He's great.
I always used to say Sean Pertwee. Of course it's Sean Pertwee, because it's Sean Pertwee. And I'm like, no, it's Michael Caine. It's Michael Caine, because I like the way he challenges him. And
yes.
Like, so many of the other Alfreds are just like, yes, Master Wayne, and then they go off and do something. Whereas this was like, that's not a good idea, right? I'm not going to do that.
I love Alfred, just quickly, I love Alfred in this because he's heartwarming. He's got a bit of that comedy. He's got a bit of that sass as well. But he challenges the dude when he's being a dummy. And that's important for Batman. So he isn't just this dark, gritty guy. He's got a bit of a not a moral compass. What's the word? A bit of a conscience in a way. That's important. But also you have this
reality check.
Yeah,
isn't it?
I think what Alfred is in this, which is perfect, is he's basically a father to Bruce. He's mean when he has to be. He's sassy when he wants to be, but he's loving and kind when it's necessary. He's every layer of a good father figure. Like by bringing, like, when Bruce is kind of all defeated, by bringing up what his dad said to him, why do we fall? So we learn to pick ourselves up again. That's such a wonderful moment. It's like, it's kind of cheesy now, but imagine that in Bruce's shoes. You're at the end. It's been like, I don't know, 20 years since you've heard that, and you're at the end of your tether. You're done. You're lost. And then Alfred says that, reminding you what your father said to you. Perks you, like, it brings you back up. It's such a wonderful moment, that. And also, probably my favorite line of Alfred in all of this is, what is the point of all those push-ups if you can't even lift a bloody log?
Yeah,
I love like that. And then I had Bruce's face back.
Because that's just that kind of thing of Alfred being like, come on, stop being sympathetic, get on with it. And I like that kind of Alfred, because I've always said I don't like Alfred being the man in the chair, because that's kind of, to me, that's just Alfred just doing what he's told, kind of thing. And I like how this Alfred just goes along with it. Like when they're on that plane and Bruce Wayne basically says, I'm going to be a vigilante now. Alfred never goes, you what? He's kind of just like, okay, sure, how are we going to do this? But then later on, he's kind of, there are a few times that he's like, are you sure this is a good idea? Like when they're I really like there were 3 moments in this film where I actually laughed, which I wasn't expecting to laugh. One of them was when they were building the Batcave, and Alfred kind of just looks at him, then he goes, well, at least he'll have company. And the kind of way he just looked at that, he was just like, what are we? It was like he was going, what are we doing? Like, how have I got? This wasn't what I was expecting when I was hired to be a butler. Why am I in a cave? And I like that. That made me laugh. The second thing that made me laugh was when he clobbers the guy in the back of the head. Then he just goes, I hope you're not a fireman. And then he goes, I like that bit. Like Alfred's just seen this guy and gone, hit him. Then thought, wait, what? And then the last thing was it was Commissioner Gordon when he's in not Commissioner Gordon technically, but when he's in the Batmobile and it takes him into weapons mode, he kind of goes, whoa, and that. But they're the 3 things that made me laugh. But either way, I really liked Alfred just in this.
That's enough about Alfred and his lovely nature. Let's go back to more of what Batman is, and that's be scary and mean. Because probably my favorite moment of this entire film for me, for a Batman moment, is the docks scene. Because number one, I love a good Batman dock scene. I don't know why. I like the docks.
I like a dock scene. Anything like when Daredevil was always at the docks, I'm like, yes, give me this.
There's something about them. I really like them. But what I really like about this scene is you see that terrifying nature of Batman. You see, and I love this in any medium, you see what it's like to see Batman, to be on the receiving end of him. And it's such a wonderful opening, or introduction, I should say, to Batman in this world, because it's like the dude is scary and in almost inhuman ways. Like when he picks that guy up, and you can hear the sound of the grapple gun. You can hear it, but also the dude just swooshed by and picked up your friend. You're gonna be quite scared. And he that first moment where that guy's by the crate and it's just standing there, and then whoomph, gone. You're like, oh, okay, there's a demon here. I really love that.
I like it as well when he takes Falcone as well.
I
Just
was
rips him out of the roof and just, who are you? I'm Batman. Like, okay, very easy thing to do there is just throw Falcone to the side, or something like that. I'm Batman. Ugh. Instead, they decided to launch into the sky. And I actually rewound and watched it again because I went, wait, how did you do that? How did you just take off? And I'm like, I'm just going to accept it. I don't care how you did it. You're on a wire somehow. Sure.
It'll be
whatever.
His grapple attached to his belt probably, but it's such a cool thing where he just goes, right, peace, whoomph. And it's like, right.
Yeah, because you can imagine that in Falcone's shoes, where you've got this guy grabbing you. You've gone, who are you? I'm Batman. And you've gone, what does that mean? And then you're flying now. You've been like, what is that?
No, you've just been headbutted and then you're being pulled away.
Yeah.
You're going to be so confused. But it's another, like, that element of that theatricality, and why it really, this whole film shows you why the fear tactics and how the theatrical elements can work, and it shows you how a Batman can be real.
And also that it's explained by Ra's al Ghul saying, take on theatrics. So it's like, okay,
do drama.
Because it's like, it's so many things where I've always said, it's like, I think I've said this sometimes on the podcast, like, why is he dressed up as a bat? Why is he just doing this whole theatrical thing? Why is he like so attention seeking? And there are so many times when people when it kind of just goes, because it's a symbol of hope. It's to be scary. And you go, yeah, but that's not explaining why there's a grown man dressed as a bat. And he's gone, bat copter, Batmobile. It's like, it's so silly. But this is like, no, he's doing that because theatrics can help elevate a performance, and that performance is of fear. And that kind of thing, I'm going, I like how you're explaining things. And I think that's what I really appreciated most about this, is that it's just explaining things rather than going, you decide.
And it's explaining it without ruining it. Because I think in a lot of things, if something's explained, sometimes it's like, oh, great, now it's just that. And it's ruined. Like, it's like with a horror film. If you see the scary thing, it's like, that's kind of ruined. But even when you see Batman later on, just kind of casually in the daytime, just kind of chilling, although you don't, but you know what I mean? It doesn't take away that fear factor, because when we see Batman, we see him in two different ways. We either see him as kind of Batman, I'm just Batman, hello, you can see everything, do you like my cape? Or we see him from the point of view of every other person. And that's where the fear factor comes in. And by seeing Batman in those two ways, it means that when you see him in the normal way, when he's just in the cave, for example, it doesn't take away from the fact we see him from the other way, because we don't then see him in the normal way and then continue to see him in the normal way every time. You'll see him that normal way, but then whenever you see him fight someone, you'll see it from that point of view of the villain. And that means that that, okay, right, I know what he looks like and all that, but to everyone else, he's still this terrifying creature that moves like a demon, and it's terrifying.
I think also when you said you don't like some of the editing in some of the fight scenes, I think that's something I've not even noticed, because I like the way we kind of don't even see him fight. I actually kind of like that, because I feel like it's kind of thing, especially because we've done like 10 episodes of this. I'm thinking, I kind of know how Batman fights now. I know what to expect. When I'm not seeing it, it's kind of like my actual thing is going, I wonder what he's doing then, because if we're not even seeing this, then he could be doing a real gritty fight, and we don't see that. And I kind of like that, because then we're seeing it from the perspective of, I'm goon number 4 in the corner. What the hell is going on? And I actually kind of really appreciate that. You couldn't have done that across the entire trilogy. It had got boring. But across just in the first film, when you see only glimpses of him fighting, I actually kind of really like that.
Yeah, I've always preferred a really nice wide shot for a fight scene. Give me Daredevil hallway fight scene any day. I love that so much. But I do agree with you, and I've been trying to get to this point for the past 15 minutes. And thank you. But I do agree with you when it comes to the way these fight scenes are done. In this film, Batman is done to be scary. And whenever you see him fighting crime or out in the world, you often see it from the point of view of the criminals, as I've said. So in the fight scenes, by doing it with the fast cuts and you're not really seeing what's going on, I agree with you. What it does is it makes you think, and it makes it scarier. And it kind of shows you again what this Batman is like for everyone else. And it's I think it's a fresh take, actually. Not a fresh take in terms of how fight scenes were done from here on out, but in terms of Batman, it's a nice take for his first appearance. And it's good. And I think it
And it also limits
elevates.
it's a problem as well that, like, if you'd have had it across the 90s, a problem you'd have had so many times is, we've said this in the Michael Keaton episode, cowl restrictions and things like that. If you see a wide shot of Batman fighting, a lot of the time you can just see as he's having to turn his whole body to move. By not seeing that, if they've not got the cowl quite right in this film yet, it doesn't matter, because you're not even seeing him go. You're just seeing, you're not seeing that. So as far as we're aware, we're going, wow, this guy knows what he's doing, doesn't he? Whereas actually, if there's probably a wide shot, it would probably look like,
he fights with such prowess, and he's so balletic. And then you see the wide shot, and he's like,
yeah, exactly. It'd be like, who are you? You know what I mean? Like, because there's at the moment when the Batmobile, I thought, I don't know if they did this on purpose, but the bit when he has Rachel in the Batmobile and they're driving down that long way and then they go into the Batcave, I was like, isn't this 1989? And I'm sure it's a homage, but I was like, it's really nice, because then when he even turns to look at her, I did notice a little bit of a restriction there when I thought, you are having to go, Rachel. Like that, do you know what I mean? Rather than Rachel, you're having to do this whole exaggerated movement just to look at her. That actually really hurt my neck doing that then.
Yeah. But the thing about this suit, though, is that it's not the same one as in The Dark Knight or The Dark Knight Rises, because they did change it to be less restrictive, so he could move. So that's why you have like all the modular bits in the next suit, and he can move his neck, and it's a bit more flexible. But in this, it does restrict him a little bit, but they do a lot of stuff, as we've said, to kind of mask that, and you do still see it every so often. Although, if I am honest, I do prefer this suit when it comes to its overall design, because I think this suit is more Batman and a bit more scary and demon-like, and then this creature. Whereas in the other ones, in The Dark Knight, it does look more like he's wearing an armored suit, which, yes, makes sense that he'd wear armor. I don't find it very scary, and I think it takes away from that.
I do think this is better looking Batman. I know what you're saying, though maybe just sort the neck out. Do you know what I mean? That's my problem with every Batman. Sort the neck out. But I agree with you that I think the suit looks better. And because I know the Nolan trilogy has always been, probably the reason I like it is because the Nolan trilogy has always been described as Batman in the real world. Whereas I think that's always how people have always seen these films. And what would if Batman existed, what would it be like? And I think that's why I can understand it a bit better, because with some of the other Batmans, you have to suspend a little bit of belief. You have to go, okay, these are just the laws of this world.
It's great seeing this comic book version, but my dude's got a Batwing that can turn on a dime, which is a bit mental, but it's great, you know? He can jump across a room and punch a guy before someone shoots him in the face.
Yeah, so by this being it being the real world, again, the benefit of this over animation, because obviously animation can do whatever the hell it wants. With this being real world, I'm like, I can understand this because this is more realistic, and I prefer Batman to be a bit more realistic, because I feel like Batman's one of the, he's probably the most gritty.
I think a large part of his whole shtick is he's quite realistic. The whole point is he's a normal, as normal as a billionaire can be. He's a normal guy turned superhero.
Because it's he's one of few companions that is just companions. He's one of few superheroes that is just a bloke in a suit.
So where did he travel with the Doctor? I forget that bit.
Yeah, I don't know why companions came out there. You think Batman, you just think of this dark, gritty thing. So I think when things do start to be like, here's our comic book rules, I feel like it does take you out of it slightly. It's not like when you watch something like Superman and something ridiculous is happening and you go, all right, fair enough. This one feels like, can we make this realistic? Nobody has superhero powers here. There's actually no super. Is Batman technically a superhero? Because super, in the traditional sense of the word, means they have powers.
But I like to think in the world of kind of DC and all that, the super for Batman is the fact he's basically the best a human being could be. That's kind of the point. But I love a good comic Batman. But the thing I love about Batman so much is the fact is he's a human. He's a human being shoved in a suit. He'll get defeated. He will be defeated by someone, but he'll come back. Like one of my favorite quotes from the comic is, each day I hear, it's time to die, Batman. It's over, Batman. This is the end, Batman. Every night. And yet I'm still here. It's one of my favorite quotes from the comic. It's from Rebirth, actually, I think. But it embodies kind of what Batman is. Yes, he's an incredible superhero, but the dude's not indestructible. But his whole thing is coming back and his tenacity. And I don't think he would be able to have that if it weren't for his realistic elements by being this human. If he were this unstoppable being, he wouldn't have this drive, would he? He wouldn't need it because he'd just be able to walk through someone.
And I think also that you can kind of connect that to the trauma in this, because when you get to see more of the Waynes in this, like we said earlier, and then you see the alleyway death scene. So many in the Batman interpretations of seeing, you kind of just see it's something I've said to you before, and you've gone, dude, his parents were murdered. But what I've said is, this man is like in his 50s. Why isn't he over it? Because what I mean by that is, your parents die. Eventually, it's upsetting. Of course, it's a massive emotional trauma, but people carry on with their lives. Do you know what I mean? When the Batman is like, especially when you see older Batman, he's like in his 50s and 60s, and he's still like, my parents were murdered. It's like, that was a long time ago. Why are you not still over it? And I think why I like the explanation in this film is because it kind of shows you, rather than just going, they left an opera. Oh no, they were gunned down. This was kind of like, it was kind of Bruce Wayne's fault. And I actually kind of like that because it adds it. It's like suddenly like, what, I can understand if you were in your 50s and still like, my parents are dead, because you'd be like, I blame myself. And that makes more sense than being like, my parents were murdered in an unfortunate accident and I'm still talking about it 50 years later. That makes far more sense to me. And I really like that version of it being here.
Yes. The element of Bruce wanting to leave the theatre is a nice addition, I think, because of his fear. And this film is all about fear, and it's incredibly well done. But in kind of classic stories for Batman, they go to see the Mark of Zorro. They leave, they go down an alley, they're gunned down. That's basically how it goes. But in this, by having him actively want to leave, and then his father, played by Linus Roach, who I think is a brilliant casting for Thomas Wayne, and my dad's worked for him, actually. But seeing Bruce be the kind of the catalyst which forces them outside, and then they're gunned down, it's important for this film because it adds that layer of why Bruce blames himself. Because instead of just the kid blaming himself for being, obviously, I should have done something, instead of just being this kind of classic Bruce blames himself because he should have helped, he blames himself for that, but also because if he wasn't scared of those bats and then he didn't leave the theater,
they'd still be alive.
Yeah. So it's got that classic layer, but it's also got this extra layer which links back into the film's whole fear factor, which is, I was going to say it's nice. It's not nice. It's quite depressing, but it's good and it's
But
important for the film.
I much prefer it than just being they're shot, the end.
Mm.
Because I do think that is like there are a lot of people in this world whose parents were murdered when they were a child. There's not a billion Batmen running around, is there?
Wow.
It's something
Would the
you
world be a
get.
better place if they were?
It's something that people take a lot of years to recover from,
Mhm.
but they do.
Yeah.
So that's always been like, again, that's the kind of suspend your belief thing where I'm kind of going, look, Batman, this isn't very real world, is it? Like, you know, not everybody's running around going, my parents were murdered. It's like, you just live your life.
But no, what it does is it adds that element.
And I much prefer that than just being like the traditional kind of flashback we see where he's like, ha ha ha, walking down the street. The next minute the pearls are rolling in a puddle. I prefer this.
Speaking of the whole kind of death scene, it's done like nowadays people say, oh, it's done so much, we don't need to see the origin story. It's kind of the classic kind of Spider-Man thing. We don't need to see the origin, we don't need to see the death of the Waynes. I always like I always like seeing the death of the Waynes. No, take that out of context. I do quite like seeing it because it's important. It's important for the character, but I just want to say in this, it's done in such a real way. We always keep coming back to real, and I think that's this whole film summarized, real. But the way it's done in this film is it is just a robbery gone wrong. Like Thomas is trying to calm the situation down. He does a slight step, which then causes Joe Chill to fire. And
Joe Chill, not the Joker.
Yes, Joe Chill, which is what it should be, and I do prefer it that is, and I'll come to that in a second. But having it kind of be this, we're being robbed, let's be calm about this collective. It's all just gone to shit in like a split second because of this murderer Joe Chill being on edge. And it's done without slow motion, without being over stylized. It is just done in such a real fashion, which is honestly more traumatic to me than the way I've seen it done in other iterations. Like the way Zack Snyder does it is it's all over the top, and you see the pearls fall in slow motion, and it's interesting to see. And I do like seeing that, but I don't find it nearly as impactful as seeing it in real time and just seeing it be a robbery gone wrong.
I know exactly what you mean, because I was thinking when I was watching it, I thought this scene was over very quickly, wasn't it? Because it is without the slow motion theatrics. And I think, you know, something we've said before in that when Mark Ruffalo has said the Hulk is a character that is like the new Hamlet, everybody gets to play it. We've said actually it's probably more like Batman. It's been far too everybody of a certain age gets to play Batman eventually. Also, you could say everybody of a certain age gets to play Thomas Wayne as well. Because how many times have we seen that scene? And like I said, it is always exactly the same as, oh, you get the pearls rolling through the puddle and you see a drop of blood and then this kind of thing. And it's all this very much, it's overplayed out. Like it's this theatrical thing where they think, you know, they've probably gone to this location for the day and they've gone, well, we're not going to have this done in 30 seconds, are we? Let's drag this out. Let's do a whole thing. Essentially, when it is just, you're dead. I'm off. That is like, oh yeah, they're dead. It's not like, no, father. It's like this whole thing. Whereas when you do something like that, it takes it away because it suddenly becomes, you know you're watching a film. Whereas when it's just, like, oh, his parents
it shows you
dead.
how fleeting life can be. And I really do like Batman Begins, and I think it's a brilliant, not just interpretation of Batman, it's a brilliant launching point, really, for anyone who's new to Batman and just for Batman fans out there. If you're feeling a bit burnt out with what Batman is at the moment, like he's not quite what I want him to be. He's not a good guy. He's not dark enough, or he's just not quite there. Go and watch this, and I think a lot of people will be pleasantly surprised, and it'll reinvigorate a lot of Batman fans, you know?
Because that's how I feel by this. Because it's the Nolan trilogy is something that I really enjoyed it when it was out until it got to Dark Knight Rises, and I was like, what the hell was that? But it's something that it's like over the years I don't think of it as fondly anymore. like for years, I used to go, Dark Knight is my favorite film ever. Nothing will ever beat it. And then Logan was released, and I was like, Logan is my favorite film ever. Nothing will ever beat it. And Dark Knight, I don't think it's even in like my top 10 anymore. It's completely just fell. But now, having watched this, I'm kind of like, and then from that, it would be like, I like the Dark Knight. The other two I don't like. Now I'm suddenly like, 2 out of 3 ain't a bad average. To me, think these are easily the 2 best Batman films, as far as I'm concerned. I don't think any of the others even come close. So
I agree with you. Yes.
Before we even started this podcast, I was talking to somebody else, and I remember saying, "Has there actually ever been a good live action Batman?" Because you think about them all, there's always a problem with them all. But now, having seen this, I've suddenly gone, "Yeah, there has been a good live action Batman."
I think it's because we've
There
got
might only
so
be the
many...
one. There might only be the one, but
I
there
think
is
it's
now.
because we've got so many versions of Batman, and I've explored so many since I first watched Batman Begins. It kind of, you get a bit saturated, It's like I've seen all these versions which are good and I enjoy, and I love the animations, I love the comics, but it's like the live action ones haven't really done anything great. You think that, especially after what we had recently, But then you go back and you watch this and you're like, oh yeah, it was good. But I've just had this good memory pushed to the side by Ben Affleck killing people. It's
because like I was thinking, like, if you had to, I don't know how many live action Batman films have been, maybe like 11 or 12 or something. But I bet if you looked at the full list, you'd go, these actually are mostly crap. Because you would go, Justice League. Zack Snyder's Justice League is a bit better, but Batman's not great. Batman versus Superman. Okay, that's already.
But compared to the thing is though, I really like Batman vs Superman. I now watch this and I'm thinking, Batman vs Superman's a bit shit in it.
I've never liked it, but they're like, that's already like the 3 most recent films are like, and then you then go Batman 89, yeah, that's pretty good, yeah. But then you go Batman Returns, Batman Forever, Batman and Robin. We're now at 6 films, and we're like, none of these are any good. And then you even think, and then you could say, I mean, I really love 1966, and it is good, but you think it is a bit campy, isn't it?
Yeah, you can't say it's.
You can't say it's good Batman. I think that's 7, and then you even go Dark Knight Rises. So I'm currently at 8 films, and they're all crap.
Yeah,
like they're not even. I would take it down to 7 and say I like 66.
Half of those I could bear to watch. The other half I will probably turn off halfway through.
For me, this is as far as I'm concerned, this is 7 bad films.
Yeah,
and then I suddenly go 89. Batman Begins, Dark Knight, and maybe 66. And I go, so that's 4 against 7.
Maybe,
films.
but I'd like at least guaranteed 3,
Yeah. So it's like, actually, we don't have a very good batting average for
no, Batman doesn't have a good track record for this, does he? My God. And it's just...
It's something when you actually think about it, you go, we've not actually done very well, have we?
No. Wow.
It's like when the Spider-Man trailer dropped last night, I suddenly thought, do I actually like any live action Spider-Man? Because I thought I don't think those Tobey Maguire films have aged very well. The Andrew Garfield films were never good to begin with.
I really like
them. And then actually Tom Holland Spider-Man, I really like Tom Holland, but actually the MCU's kind of butchered Spider-Man, and it isn't really the Spider-Man we know and love. So has there actually ever been a good live action Spider-Man? It's like the 2 probably most famous superheroes of all time, Batman and Spider-Man, are like, have they actually been ever any good?
They've all been butchered.
So like, are they
apart from Christopher Nolan and Tim Burton?
They're the most famous. They're the most famous superheroes, and I'm like, well, they're both crap actually. In what we've had, the interpretations of them we've had actually both crap. And it's nice for me to watch this and go, you know what, I actually like this film.
And it really shows you that Batman and like superhero films, they can be good. And I think this fills me with so much hope now, because I was really excited for the Batman previously, because it was like, are we going to get a good Batman? Are we actually going to get a good Batman? But now I'm thinking a lot of things the Batman's doing reminds me of this, and I'm now thinking we probably will get a good Batman rather than just blind hope.
Yeah.
And that's got me excited, because track record isn't good for Batman, and it'd be nice to have something really good again, because the last, I'd say, undeniably good Batman thing, like just good, probably was The Dark Knight, I'd have to say. And
that
that was
is
forever ago. I mean, this came out in
13 years.
2005.
I know that was I know Dark Knight was 2008.
So wow.
13 years ago.
13 years. So I love Batman because of 2008, and for 13 years I've been living in purgatory.
Yes.
Brilliant.
There was one good year. No, 3 good years between 2005 2008. People going, "Oh great, Batman is amazing, isn't he?" And then after that, it all just fell apart.
I
But
remember
the fact that I only have, let me count. 1, 2. The fact I only have 3 negative points about this film, right? And they were, does nobody make the connection that Bruce Wayne returns and then Batman appears? That was one of them.
But that's just a normal Batman thing. Like that's
But
always
I
the
do
dude could
think, like-
wait a week, couldn't he?
Yeah, it's like, or I would have personally just like returned as Batman first. Batman's here.
Ooh.
And then after that, then go, "Oh, I'm Bruce Wayne, I'm back." It's like, Bruce, there's a guy called Batman. You're not important right now.
Really? Huh.
They'd be like, "Oh, who is this guy? I've not heard of him." I feel like that makes more sense rather than going, "Hey, I'm Bruce Wayne. Hey, how about this Batman guy?" Eh? You know, that feels like,
Yeah, it
come
would
on.
make more sense for him to get his alibi sorted before he shows up.
Yeah.
Blithering
So
idiot.
that was one of them. My second point was summoning bats, really, because I thought that was a bit cheesy.
That's
really,
again
when
from
he's
Batman
running-
Year One. I love that. That's such
when he-
that it.
yeah.
This film is so Batman Year One, but really adapted to be perfect, actually.
Mm.
And that sonar thing is just a classic Batman thing. Again,
Yeah,
comic book Batman.
That
do
that
like.
was just something when I was like, this is a bit cheesy, isn't it?
I love the
for
way
a
he jumps
realis-
down
for
though
a
through the middle.
realistic
Oh,
film. And then my final one was just, I'm not fussed on Wayne Manor being burnt down. I'd rather that be kept intact. They're my only negative points. The fact they're my only negative points, which none of them are anything to do with, like, usually I'm going,
the characters or the story.
usually I'm going, all these characters I would change. I would restructure the film to do this. That's
Mhm.
usually how I am. The fact I would keep all of that. I would keep everything. I would just make sure Wayne Manor doesn't burn down, and I'd just get Batman to return before Bruce Wayne. The fact they're my only points, and like, this film is gone up from like a 6 out of 10 to like a 9 out of 10.
Oh
me.
yeah,
That's how much it's jumped up for me.
Watching this by itself when I was younger was amazing. Watching it again in the cinema, again by itself, was amazing. Watching this after seeing all of these previous versions and knowing more about, because I mean, I don't mean to blow my own trumpet here. I know a lot about Batman, and I think I know a lot about the character, and who he is and what I want from him and what I believe is Batman. But after doing this podcast and exploring him more critically than I have probably ever in my life, I've now grown a much bigger appreciation, much greater appreciation for what Batman is. And now I know what I want from Batman. And then watching this, I don't just think this film is amazing. I think this film is damn near perfect for Batman. And I think it's a brilliant film in itself. And that thing about Wayne Manor, they do say in this film how they're going to rebuild it brick for brick. I do think they should have rebuilt it in the next one instead of having that whole film without it. It's another thing the Dark Knight doesn't quite do as well, I think. But I do think they just shouldn't have burnt it down, because Wayne Manor and the Batcave is such a staple for Batman. And you see some great Batcave, Batmobile, Wayne Manor moments in this, which are just so integral to Batman, I think. Like when he goes into the cave, goes down in his dressing gown, puts the suit on, Batmobile Tumbler through the thing. I love the Tumbler, by the way. It's really warm to me, and it feels
it's grown on me in this as well. It was something. It's so interesting. If we'd done this for episode 1, my opinions would have been so different, and I'd have been like, I don't like this Batmobile, and
I would have enjoyed it, but not as much for me.
I probably would have, but I probably would have ranked this like as my least favorite Batmobile. Like, and if we did this for episode 1, now I'm like, do I actually prefer this? Because even though I prefer the Gothic design of, like, say, the Keaton one, it's one of the things that goes, why is it so long? It's not very practical, is it? When this is doing all the really cool things, I'm like, yeah, this is what a Batmobile should be doing, actually, isn't it? Like, this is what Batman isn't just going, I've got a cool car. He's going, I need to get from point A to point B. This is my best way to do it. So suddenly I'm like going, well, I think this might be my favorite Batmobile. Even though if we'd done this 10 weeks ago, I'd been like, this is the worst Batmobile. I hated it.
I think it doesn't overtake Batman the Animated Series Batmobile, and it's basically neck and neck with 1989's. I think that's just purely nostalgia, really, and I love the designs. But in terms of being a realistic Batmobile and just doing what it needs to do, and actually looking damn cool while doing it, this car is perfect for it. Also, I will say this is probably the best sound designed Batmobile of all time. The way that thing, like that squeal of the wheels when it does a drift, like that, you know what I mean? That sound is unbelievable. I love that so much. And I think I'm going to have to go watch more Batman because this is our finale and it's, yeah, I won't have to watch Batman. Won't stop me though, will it? But yeah, there's just so many things in this film I think really work and it's so real. One thing I will say, Batman needs to fireproof his suit. My note is here, he forgot to fireproof the suit. I'm going to make it kind of bulletproof, not fully knife proof.
It's probably something he was not anticipating, isn't
I
it?
mean, yeah, okay, fair enough. But
I feel like if he was like, no, you can imagine him planning with like Alfred and he's going, right, I'm going to this crazy doctor guy. I think he's using these like gases. It's like, sir, will you need it fireproof? He's like, why would I need it fireproof?
That's an extra 200k. I don't need
And then
it.
suddenly he's like, I'm on fire. But
Yeah.
anyway.
Honestly, the more I think about this film, the more I like this than The Dark
Same.
Knight.
I mean, not more than Dark Knight.
Well, for me, well, I probably watch The Dark Knight and think, God, this is better. But you know what I mean? Like there are elements which film does do better. The story in The Dark Knight is better. Like it is just a better story because Heath Ledger is unbelievable as the Joker. But I think this is more of a Batman film than The Dark Knight is. I think The Dark Knight is a Batman and Joker film, whereas this feels like a Batman film. And I really do like that. But I think on that note, one last thing just to mention, sorry. Escalation. At the end, I love how Jim Gordon, played by Gary Oldman, love him, by the way. This is probably one of my favorite roles for him. I love how he mentions escalation, which I don't think they outright mention in other Batman mediums, which is the fact, yes, we buy Kevlar, they buy armor-piercing rounds. Is the whole point that Batman now wears a mask and jumps across rooftops. Basically, are the enemies, are the villains? Is crime gonna escalate? Are they gonna now start wearing masks? Are they gonna start having these gimmicks? And it's nice for them to point it out, you know. And it's like, yes, this will happen. Escalation is a thing, and it's a thing that happens in real life as well. It's nice of them to mention it, but also it's inevitable as well. This escalation from the good side was necessary to stop it. But now we've got to deal with the repercussions of having to go to this extreme. And I really liked it being mentioned. And I think a key point of this whole film is it mentions so many elements that need to be mentioned and are often overlooked because the creators assume we already know it, you know? And it's nice.
I agree.
So yeah, my final thought on this is I absolutely love it. And if you want to watch something Batman and you're feeling a bit burnt out with Batman, this will perk you right up, I promise.
Yeah, because I do think it's going to be something. Whenever I've talked about the Nolan trilogy with people, and I've always gone, I like the Dark Knight, not fussed on the other two. I'm now going to go, I like the Dark Knight, but I think there's an argument that Batman Begins could even be better. And then people are going to go, whoa, 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 whoa. And I'm going to go, look, I'm just saying it's an argument. I don't believe it, but, you know, there is an argument there.
Go talk to George.
And then they'll say, how do you feel about The Dark Knight Rises? And I'll go, don't mention The Dark Knight Rises. We're not talking about that one right now. But it's gone up. What I was just doing then, if it looked like I was just on my phone, is because I just suddenly thought, I need to re-rate this on Letterboxd because that's what I always do. And I just looked, when I'd previously rated it, it was at 3.5 stars. I've just given it 5.
Hooray!
Because it's just gone from like I said, it's gone from like my 4th or 5th favorite Batman film to my 2nd.
And I think
that's my final opinion.
If you watch any other podcasts, or even this one, you'll know I struggle with rating things 10 out of 10. And I'm leaning towards a 9, but if I'm honest, if I had a little sprinkling of nostalgia, it's a 10 for me, which is a 5 out of 5 on Letterboxd.
Batman is here, and I think Bale is now my favorite Batman.
I love Christian Bale, I really do. And I said when we were doing Michael Keaton's Batman, I mentioned how I think Christian Bale is probably my Batman, and you said, I think it's, and you were really kind of you scoffed at the idea and said how Michael Keaton is unbeatable. So it's quite nice watching this now and being like, because you kind of changed my mind when we watched Michael Keaton's. I was like, yeah, Michael Keaton's better. I'm watching this and I'm thinking, what were you thinking?
Nah, yeah. I'm like, that was purely, but that was because of the way those Nolan films have soured in my mind over the years.
And is that the Nolan trilogy fault, or is that because of how the owners of Batman have decided to give us Batman in such a terrible way since, you know?
Yeah, who knows?
Your opinion on Batman soured because of how Batman's been portrayed. But no, well, let's end it on a happy note and say that Batman is in Batman Begins. And as you said, which was quite lovely, actually, Batman is here, you know? It's great. Go watch it. And I loved it. And I'm really glad you enjoyed it, Aiden. And I think it's a wonderful point to end here. But yes, this is the finale of this series. We may be coming back for a couple of specials.
We will be back in March.
Yes.
For the Batman.
Yes, we'll be back in March for the Batman, but it'll just be a special. So we'll be back for big Batman events, you know. If Batman actually does become real, you bet your ass we'll be back. But we'll be back in March for the Batman. And yeah, this is the finale, but it's quite sad. I'm quite sad. But thank you very much for listening and watching, everyone.
And we will be back in March.
Yes, so we'll see
Same
you.
bat time.
Same bat channel. Bye-bye. I'm going to cry now.